Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for the Africa Martech Debate. CIO East Africa is very excited to host you today and have you engage with us on marketing going forward between traditional and digital marketing. As you are all aware, we are hosting Africa Martech Summit on the 30th of this month. So we look forward to starting the conversation now and continuing it then. My name is Laura Chite, and I will be your host today. And in the studio, I have my marketing gurus. They're calling themselves the marketing mafia. We will hear more about that. And I'd like to ask the gentlemen to introduce themselves. I will start with Moses from that end. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Laura. My name is Moses Kemibaro. I'm the founder and CEO of .savvy, a digital marketing agency.
Thank you. Welcome, Moses. Bogwa?
Bogwa J here, COO at Safiri Express, where we're trying to move cities more efficiently.
Awesome.
Ali Hussein Kasim, CEO Kipoche Limited.
All right, so as you heard, ladies and gentlemen, these are going to be my fellow panelists today as we discuss marketing in detail. And I'm very excited to host you guys here. I look forward to a fantastic 1 hour. On behalf of CIO East Africa and the panelists here, I'd really like to apologize to the audience for us starting a few minutes late, but trust me, it will be worth the wait. So grab your coffee, grab your tea, grab a glass of water. If you had a heavy night yesterday, pop something to kill that hangover because you must engage live. Tweet, retweet, post on LinkedIn, post on Facebook, whatever you're seeing on the screen, anything exciting that you see, post it online. Tag at CIO East Africa, and let's get the conversation going. So I'm going to kick off first because I'm automatically taking this thing as ladies first, as the only lady sitting here. And I'm a traditional marketer. I still do believe that we should stick to traditional methods of marketing. What do I mean by that? I'm talking about things like what CIO East Africa focuses on. We do events, okay? We are an organization that focuses mainly on marketing technology solutions by connecting end users and solution providers. That's what we do. And how do we do this? Through events. We have a publication that's a magazine that's been there for 13 years, and this is our anchor product, yeah? So when I hear this story around digital marketing, I'm wondering to myself, am I supposed to stop producing my magazine that everybody is hooked to, of which we even tried to make go digital and go online and do a soft copy, and our audience actually pushed back and they're like, we still want the hard copy of the magazine. We still have to distribute this magazine physically to our subscribers. We still get advertisers to come on board and put their ads in the magazine. We still do stories and they're still read, okay? So for me, I still remain hardcore. Events must continue, which is the traditional way of marketing. Publishing must continue, it's the traditional way of marketing. Distribution of flyers must continue. You have to go to City Council, get that stamp,
yes,
and distribute your flyers.
I think, one of the things that I feel kind of like distorts the many conversations is that we feel that it needs to be a shift, a complete shift to say either or, but it is not. Because you see, for CIO magazine, for example, unlike other publishing counterparts where they say nyakufunga nyama, you have more of a longer term value. Like if you sit down with your content, you don't consume it all at once. And it's evergreen. It makes sense today, makes sense 6 months down the line. So depending on the product mix that you have to look at that entire, spectrum of marketing and how you're able to reach your audience. And it's fantastic that you got feedback from readers saying, you know what, I still want my physical copy.
There are guys like my friend Harry, your publisher. Lazima anuse ile print.
Print, yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
He has to flip, That's fine.
Yes.
That is okay. But I think the world has moved to what we call now omnichannel. And the term omni comes from, and I don't want to be blasphemous here, but it comes from the word godly. You are everywhere. You need to be everywhere. So you need to be offline. You need to be digital. Let's take CIO. You've just talked about your events. Where are we right now? We're in studio. We are physical. But where are guys? Guys
Yeah,
are
with us
digital.
virtually.
They
Yeah.
are virtually watching us. So you must be able to mesh that seamlessly. And how are you engaging? You're engaging on Facebook, you're sending shots. I'll tell you something. That kanjo, that stamp, that has to continue for sure. Because vitu kwa ground
Yes.
is different. However, you must also translate it digitally. Guys are living on WhatsApp. Guys are living on Instagram. Guys are living on Facebook. But they are different type of guys. Your audience is living all over the place. So you must engage them where they are.
Andy, I beg to differ.
Okay.
Because I think when you think about the pandemic and the last 15 months, I think consumer behavior has changed. Everyone is now consuming on their phone, the predominant digital device. We had a...
But consuming what?
they're consuming everything.
I mean, food still has to reach my mouth physically.
Yes.
Absolutely.
If it's dressing, I still have to wear it. So I mean, saying that we are consuming the stuff digitally, like you said, there still has to be a physical aspect to very many of these things.
You know, Moses, I hear what you're saying, but I'll give you a very interesting example, live example that I encountered a few weeks ago. I don't know whether you guys remember that investment deck for that mall in Karen.
Waterfront, yes.
That mall was going around on WhatsApp. It became viral until my watchman, I was driving home one day. I parked my car and, you know, my usual greet him in the evening and stuff like that. I said, boss, umeona ile advert ya wanauza. Nikamuuliza, that's interesting. What's of interest to you on this one? I said, unajua sako yetu inaangalia hii maneno. I'm like, okay. So that's digital. That's digital at the basic level. WhatsApp. These are guys we are saying wanasoma magazeti physically, but they are consuming this media online. However, that guy is still waiting for my neighbor who still buys a Nation or a Standard in the evening. He passes on to him. So we must be able to mix, and that's the thing around marketing and technology. It's not an either or. You've got to have the perfect mix.
Yeah, but Moses, I'd like to hear what you have to say around this, because I know you're a guru around. Yeah.
And I think the thing you've got to do is you've got to look at the generational shift happening here, right? We talk about the millennials who are now old, then you have the Gen Zers who are now the younger people coming into the workplace. And what you find is, I always like to call them in my office the ones with the tattoos and the dreadlocks, right? This generation, they are predominantly digital from the get-go. They don't read newspapers. They have no affinity for newspapers. When you think about radio, they're listening to podcasts on their mobile devices. They always have the buds in their ears listening or watching something. So when you look at that generational shift, and again, aligning with what's happening globally, you got to look at the reality that there's this convergence around, the mobile phone, bandwidth and content. And when you bring that trifecta together, that is where these guys live, eat, and breathe. But also to take it a step further, you're finding that as our digital consumption behavior sort of accelerates and grows during this time with the pandemic, when it comes to marketing, it is also the most cost-effective way of reaching people at scale. You can't compare it to traditional media. I think traditional media still has its place, but when you look at the cost per acquisition or the cost of reach, when you're looking at these audiences, and again, we're looking at these younger segments, then digital really does give you the best value for money.
Yeah, but in fact, you've said something very important. Number one, I think the most important thing is that people need to define your audience.
Yes.
You have to define your audience, okay? Now, the young ones are instant gratification people. Yeah, if that's who your product is targeted at, I think it's very important that a larger chunk of your marketing is focused on digital. And then as it's focused on digital, how do you convert on the spot? You get what I'm saying? And then secondly, there's the issue of, if you're a small business, how much are you going to put into digital to be able to see results? And how much are you going to continue doing traditionally? Like if you're going to have a brick and mortar space, is your business going to survive? Who are you targeting? How are you doing this? Just some food for thought.
Look, let's be real.
Yes, Ali.
Moses, I agree with you. I agree. But let's get down to reality on the ground. All right? Reality on the ground. It's all good to talk about cost per acquisition and stuff like that. But what's the reality on the ground? What percentage of Africans today can afford to go online 24/7? What percentage?
Bandos.
You are talking about reality on the ground. So, we've got all this. We want to get there. But before we get there, we have to sort of tamper our thinking about how technology can improve us, improve business. I mean, yesterday, I got to Nairobi at about 4. I had traveled, and I was craving for my biryani at Mitaiwala. And I'm like, how do I order this thing? The guy is not on Glovo. The guy is not on wherever. So how do you do it? And I'm talking to this guy for like 2 years. He doesn't give a hoot. And he doesn't realize how that can amplify his business, right? So I give him a call. I tell him, I want this, and this. How much? Ananitumia SMS. Thank you for M-Pesa. I send M-Pesa. I send him confirmation on my email. On SMS. Then I call my guy.
Go take.
My rider. Go pick. Dude, man. I need one click. So I hear what you're saying. But are the guys on the ground ready? And how can we help them? Because this is really about that conversation. It's happening. But is it happening at scale? I beg to differ.
Yeah.
Now that you speak about...
Mbugo, as you speak, I'd just like Moses to adjust his mic because we can't hear him properly. Okay. Yeah, towards your
I
mouth.
think one of the primary questions that we should be asking is, are these MSMEs, one, are they aware of the potential? Two, are the tools even affordable? Right?
Tools are free.
It depends. Ali, the the tool may be free, but the knowledge to know what to do with it is not. You have to invest time to do it. And
So upskilling.
Upskilling.
Yes.
And I'll give you an example. There's a project I was working with there was a big funder and probably thousands of MSMEs. Everyone is a businessman. When you look at the newspaper and say, unafanya nini, mimi ni mwanabiashara. That type of person. Fantastic platform built to enable them take their skills online. Guys are given the prototype and suddenly they say, this thing of yours is not working. Then of course, technical teams are there trying to figure things out. And then someone just says, just ask them if they have bundles. Because and now you
basics.
Now you're there and you're like, oh, okay. Now the guy humbles himself a bit. It's like, this connectivity thing is a biggie. Now juxtapose that with I'm on a certain tariff. I know I've got X free minutes a day for the 100 shillings that I've paid for the week, and I can call for my biryani at 0 additional cost, and I tell Ali that logistics transport ni yako. So I've essentially moved it from there. So in my universe, do I want a bigger business? Am I happy with selling 10 full fish a day?
Exactly.
Do I even want that? We keep saying not every business needs to be a 1 billion shilling business.
No.
Can we thrive on cottage industries where you have your small universe, Ali has his, Moses has his, and we all, get value from the market? Let's not impose our own visions of what success should be to all these SMEs and say, this is the path that you should follow. Another use case is during the pandemic, I ended up working a lot with telco dealers. Zero technology. The only technology that they interface with is at some office with connectivity to 2 computers that they use to access telco backends. Everything else is what I call boots on the ground. And here are people who are turning over 300 million shillings a month. And they're saying, I am meeting my customer on the road. I am in Gikomba, I am meeting my customer.
Wow.
But now what you realize is what they lack is you say, okay, so you sold to this lady. Ule mama wa this and this and this. You know, what's her name? I don't know. How many times does she buy from you in a month? I don't know. Like, then when you bring the conversation home and say, do you know it is a lot easier to have her spend 200 more shillings than trying to figure out the next person?
I want Moses to comment.
I think there's a very important point being made here around, the different contexts in which these businesses, organizations are operating. If you're trying to reach the masses at scale, what technology do you use? Maybe SMS is the best platform for that. When you're reaching a younger, more savvy audience, maybe it's Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. And then the other thing I'm seeing here is that many of these technologies are free in terms of distribution, but the creation and the publishing of the content is not. It's not. And you need to create excellent content that is then going to resonate and drive to the conversion. Not to mention the content has to have a call to action, driving the user to a business outcome for the marketing you're putting out. So for me, one of the biggest problems I have with traditional media is very simple. What's the ROI? Okay? We can go out there and put stuff on print, we can put it on TV, we can put it on radio.
Spray and pray.
We even know that radio in Kenya today will give you the most reach across every demographic and every psychographic. However, what is the cost of that reach? What does it cost me to do that versus buying 500 shillings worth of Facebook ads on a daily basis, which allows me to reach a few thousand? So for me, it's that disproportionate value for money question that I see digital and traditional. There's this massive chasm between the two.
Moses, I think you've touched on something very important. And you're spending, say, 300K
Print ad.
on print ad on radio. So let's pick radio because you have said it has massive reach. But what's the point of having all that massive reach that you can't fulfill sales?
Yeah.
What is the point? That brings me to your point about specific targets. I'd rather spend 500 and get 10 clients. You have your, on a Facebook ad or Instagram or using HubSpot to plug in to your website, but knowing very well I can fulfill each and every one of those inquiries that are coming in. Because if you have all this huge sort of brand equity out there, and guys are looking for your product, they can't find it, you have a brand bubble. Guys like your product, but they can't satisfy their need for your product because you are unable to fulfill it. So we're getting to that basic. And allow me to just say something about a startup that I'm involved in, Dukare. Dukare is really about complete fulfillment from the supply chain, from the manufacturer to the retailer down there. So what you're talking about is that we have like 70 manufacturers on the platform. We've automated it into their ERPs. And the manufacturer the shopkeeper down there can go onto the app and order and see real-time orders. Let me tell you one of the biggest problems for the shopkeeper down there, your Duka. If Moses, you want milk, you're driving home, you've forgotten milk, you want bread, you go to that shop and there's no milk and bread. Utangoja mpaka kesho?
No.
Of course not.
You will go to the other. That guy has lost it.
Yeah.
And if it happens twice, what is the likelihood you'll go back to that guy? So we are helping that guy not to have stockouts. The global loss of sales when it comes to stockouts is in the hundreds of billions of dollars. Those are the realities on the ground.
So basically, Ali, I go back to me being the traditional marketer.
Yes.
Okay? I strongly feel that number one, the thing that should be driving marketing continues to be word of mouth marketing. Totally. $0. I for sure will be able to fulfill my orders. and I for sure will be able to build my brand. In fact, it's one of those things where it becomes a ripple effect. If the three of you go and talk about me out there, another
Then-
9 will talk about me, and another.
I
So
am
why
not
should I bother with these things?
I am not disagreeing with you, but please do not forget one thing. Social media is what is
Word of mouth.
word of mouth.
Sort of mouse.
Word
Word of mouth
I love
on
that.
steroids.
I love that.
Social media is word of mouth on steroids. But to your point, what we even discovered on Dukare is that we had to go on the ground to activate.
Yeah.
Here's the one liner. Regardless of whether you're looking at it from traditional or new age, is every interaction must lead to a transaction. And the
I love
transaction
that.
is not necessarily cash. Face to face, the transaction could be, I have sized Laura. I have kind of like said, this one her average spend on beauty is around 10K. So this one, even as I'm receiving that money via M-Pesa and we've met face to face, I will make a note of that because she's probably going to buy Lippy, again, a different shade to go with her shoes. Yeah. So the
But I
transaction
think
is
it's wrong.
that.
It's not about the shoes. It goes with the handbag or the outfit or the way your mood that
Forgive
day.
me.
You see now, you can't even get into that business.
Sometimes context is important.
Yes.
And maybe for our viewers.
Yes.
In my earlier days, I actually ran a women's portal. It was called allwoman.co.ke. Smart, confident, successful. Guess how many mamas had signed up on that thing?
How many?
30,000. 30,000.
But who was contributing the content? Not you.
We wear many hats. Which is an important point.
Yes.
An easy segue to the next thing about the knowledge acquisition of it. I may be male, but I could have a female audience for the sort of products that I am selling. I cannot just assume, and now we are going to the digital space, that because they have tools that can tell me, select age group, select this and this in Mombasa, in Nairobi, that is
Audience
my cheat sheet.
amplification.
I have to spend time understanding
Exactly.
what this audience wants. From, are you looking for, is it a lookbook? As opposed to me saying, I want to sell you this shoe, as opposed to me saying, this look good together, and be able to position that for you. That knowledge does not come for free. You have to actually spend time, because again, a lot of these things, there's hardly anything new that is spectacular enough to have people coming to you in droves. Stuff is commoditized. I mean,
So what pulls people?
what pulls people is one, for example, content, where we are saying the way I've packaged it, Laura will be on Insta and we'll see a pair of leopard shoes and just flip across. But then there's this other story that's then I'm like, wow, yenyewe, Vasha. This is a good look.
Hashtag Vasha.
This combo is 10 Gs and people are feeling liquid
Yeah.
and people are high on dopamine and they're like, click. Like you're saying, click to buy and boom.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that takes time, and that is what many people are not willing to do.
But also, I love the fact that you brought in content. So Moses, I know you want to say something. As you're saying what you're saying, I want you to give us a few tips and tricks around how to put together your content so that it draws the audience, okay, and the audience starts seeing value out of pushing out, doing digital marketing or something like that, as opposed to me coming into a supermarket and I'm told, we're having a special today, look at this flyer, Nini, pretty chicks or pretty guys, and that makes me buy. So when
I think about digital marketing, and I think this is why we're having this debate, right? Let's now look at the tech of the marketing, all right? And tech is really underpinned by data. And
Correct.
data is what really makes digital marketing sexy, because it's the idea that instead of creating one piece of creative that speaks to 100,000 general audiences, you can possibly create 20 variations of the same creative message speaking to different audiences, including, for instance, if I know that, as is commonly known in Kenya, in Nairobi, Eastleigh is an area that is popular with Somali people, and that's where they live, then I could have ads and creatives that show within a geo-targeted campaign people and faces that look Somali. If I know that Parklands is predominantly an area that is popular with the Asian community, then when I'm running ads in that area, then I can geo-fence them and geo-target them so that the creative messaging and the visuals look like the people who live there. And this is the beauty about using data and targeting and behavioral algorithms built into these platforms, so that the message is not a common standard message the way we did in traditional media, often known as spray and pray, but now we are getting to what I call surgical precision, so that the messaging, the creative, and even the targeting is very, very distinct to that audience. So instead of creating one creative, then you then blanket the whole country. You can look at the nuances. If I'm targeting in Mombasa, and I know that my audience is predominantly Muslim, guess what? I change the messaging, the creative, and the visuals to reflect what is going to resonate with that audience, including even the choice of language. I might use colloquial Kiswahili in Nairobi, but in Mombasa I use Kiswahili Sanifu. You see, and this is where I think that the marketers of today and people in the marketing role, including our SME business owner, need to move away from saying that I'm going to use a 20-year-old with the dreadlocks and tattoos to do my social media, and actually become practitioners, become actual doers, as opposed to sort of downgrading the task to somebody young, because it's that important. You need to know the nuances to get the best out of your tech within marketing, within a digital space.
And I think that basically comes down to, KYC. Who is your customer? Do you know your customer?
So important.
Data and insights.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, Moses, it reminds me of this ad during Ramadan. I can't remember the brand, but this company was marketing tissue paper to Muslims. Should have told him basic
cultural nuances.
KYC, cultural nuances. Should have told him that majority of Muslims don't use tissue paper. It's a fact. So who are you marketing to? That conversation around content is so important. And context is so important. You know, sometimes we get bogged down in this technology thing, but it boils down to basics. It boils down to basics. When Google and Facebook and Amazon are marketing to you, they have taken what Moses has said and scaled it to a global level. And what we forget is this. These companies started as startups.
Absolutely.
They didn't have the billions of dollars that they have today. So back to your point, that business owner, does he want to scale? No.
Maybe not.
Fine. If he doesn't want to scale, does he at least he or she want to make his business a little bit more efficient so that he can spend more time with his family? I think that's a no-brainer. Reminds me of that story that has been going around on social media and the internet and WhatsApp about this investment banker who walks to a fisherman, tells him, I can make your business so efficient that you make lots of money. And the fisherman asks him, so that I can do what? So that you can make so much money and, you can go to the stock market and, make more money. And the fisherman came back to the same question. So that I can do what? And finally, the investment banker tells the fisherman, so that you can have more time to rest. And the fisherman has just come from fishing at 3 in the afternoon. He's anabarizi hapo na madafu yake, and he asks this investment banker, what do you think I'm doing now?
So the motivations for the business is equally important. Let's explore the place of knowing who your customer is, and maybe in parallel look at the Data Privacy Act as well. Because what's happening now is, I go buy a pair of jeans, and traditionally I used to leave my details nikimwambia, Ali, stock ikikuja, nipigie simu, nifanye ABCD. We're getting into an era where the technology is there, but we need to be very careful how we upskill or how we tell the SMEs or how they acquire this new knowledge. Because everyone will say, you know what, all my customers who've come in, then I need to be able to send them a message whenever, whether it's on email, whether it's on text, etc. while the tools are there and the providers are many, the responsibility of how a business, small or large, captures that initial data, because you can use that data for, things like remarketing and retargeting, etc. We need to have a conversation around what are some of the best practices when it comes to onboarding that customer data onto any sort of technology that you have, even if that initial tech is Excel, because I think Excel gets doesn't get enough praise for what it does.
Yeah,
Credit.
an amazing tool.
I think what is happening now is we're seeing a situation, including in Africa, where everything is getting harmonized globally. We've seen the way tax laws are now standardized. We're now paying our digital taxes. We know that in the marketing context that cookies are going away. So that means on platforms like Google Ads and so forth.
Moses, what are cookies?
So cookies, basically, a cookie is basically.
I just thought about House of Manji and stuff like that.
Okay, apologies for that. So a cookie is basically a piece of software into your browser and your digital platforms that tracks you. That's how Google knows that, for instance, you went to Jumia, you saw a fridge, and then for the next 30 days, you see this fridge everywhere you go online because they're tracking you using a cookie. So many of these technologies are going away because now the digital platforms and the laws globally are requiring that we have the consented data around the privacy issue. And this is becoming serious. We saw the backlash with WhatsApp and Facebook recently. The people are now pushing back and saying, you know what, I want to know how my data is using. The new version of iOS on Apple now requires you or asks you, do you want these people to track you before you agree? And that's where there's been a big battle between Facebook and Apple regarding this data. So what's happening is there's a big onus now on businesses to not only have consented data, but use first-party data for marketing. You start seeing situations where people will start asking you, can you sign up for a newsletter? Can you get onto a SMS database? And then again in Kenya, we have the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, where we're seeing already communications and a lot of interesting dialogues around that, is this data consented? Did your customers are complaining even locally. So I think the next era of this digital marketing and this sort of thing is going to be, is the data consented? Did the customer agree for you to use their data? Did they agree for you to track them? And of course, all of this started off with a few years ago when GDPR took off in Europe. So we're seeing a situation where we need to now also be much more responsible around how we do our digital marketing, but also that we have the consent of the parties that we're tracking and targeting and so forth.
But you see, Moses, my thing is this: as a marketer, those are not my problems. Do you know those are not my problems? Why is it my problem that I should worry about the data
until legal comes to your office?
As it is, I am struggling to understand technology.
So here's the thing.
I am struggling to understand it.
My dear sister.
So why are you adding problems to me trying to roll out my campaigns, show return on investment, negotiate on marketing budgets?
My dear sister, here's the thing. I'm telling you this for free now.
Yes.
You must upskill yourself.
But this is the point. So are we now saying we go right back to HR and start the discussions from there?
But why do you need
starting
HR?
To upskill?
Why do you need HR?
Because they're in charge of skilling me.
No, you are in charge of skilling you.
You've absorbed responsibility.
You are in charge of skilling you.
Am I not skilled enough as a marketer? I know my 4 Ps. I know.
The 5th P will be prison very soon. The 5th P will be prison.
I love it.
See, here's the thing. One of the most important things that we are starting to learn today is that the principles of marketing are timeless.
Correct.
How they are executed and how you understand them are very different today. So when you're talking about place, see, that's one of the 4 Ps. Place. It's not your branch.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at Equity Bank today, 87% of their transactions are on mobile. So who are you building branches for? The branches will change. The nuances of how a branch services a client will change. They're going to have to be experiential. They're going to have to be focused on big clients. I want to walk into a branch, speak with my branch manager, speak with my relationship manager about investments. I want to walk into a branch with 2-3 million shillings that I've just sold my curtains in Isili and not have to worry about security. It completely changed. The problem is most marketers today have taken the traditional thinking and plugged it into digital.
Absolutely.
Big problem. Let me tell you, a brand spamming me, I'm blocking you. And I'm telling everybody on my social media, these guys are wasting my time. How do you think that's going to affect your brand?
Of course, not positively.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think, Laura, just to speak on your point about why should you evolve your skill sets and your know-how, I think two things. One is the consumer behavior has changed. We are mobile first everything. You know, it's our phone, it's our shop, it's all that stuff. But I think there's another trend that we need to talk about, which is, I like to call it the Uberification of everything. You know, when Uber launched in Kenya a few years ago, we all had our taxi guy. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And this guy, you know, on one day could arrive 5 minutes from the time you called him. On another day, you would have arrived an hour later than you had an appointment for, which cost you a big piece of business.
So he's telling you Nakuja, but he
I'm round
has
the corner.
another client.
Yeah.
And he's 20 kilometers away. So what happened? Uber came along and it completely collapsed the taxi market as we know it today. And then now you have the on-demand businesses, Q-commerce, you know, the Globals, Uber Eats. And I think what we're really seeing, especially during the pandemic, where even our kids were going to school online, where we still attend church online, you know, it's this Uberification of everything. The idea that you can sort of collapse time and effort in such a way that people then start to say, hang on a second, do I need to go to the supermarket? Or I have all this stuff to do in a day. Do I really spend 2 hours on the road and do all these things when I can do it online? And I think we're seeing right now in Kenya a hybridization of sorts where there are times when we want to go and touch and feel things in the supermarket, but quite often we're thinking to ourselves, hang on, I want to spend more time with my kids. So maybe instead of doing these things physically, I can save time and effort and maybe even money because of the commute and do it online. And I think in the digital context of marketing, I think this is where we can take advantage of that transition of behavior, where we're sort of tapping into these ways that consumers are now behaving differently so that our products and services accordingly sustain. And even in the B2B scenario, we're all still working from home, right? So what does that mean when a business is trying to market to other businesses? It's unlikely they're going to come to your office.
Yeah.
So how do you take advantage of technology to then reach them in the marketing context?
Yeah.
And also to push the fact that as MSME owners, since the market has been blown wide open, you're competing with the big boys as well, who've got access to the Facebooks and the Googles, where these companies actively seek them out and say, give us 10 million shillings and we'll show you how to utilize it. You're at the same level as them. If you're selling unga, for example, if you walk into any of these supermarkets nowadays, everyone's got a blue label product. So what's the difference between that blue label product and yours? Yet ni unga, gorogoro mbili, umeenda umesiaga, whether you went with the husks or not, so you really need to up your game and say, fine, ugali man. Some guys lost a huge opportunity there. Yet, and actually it's the whole industry really, whether you're a small time player or you're some of the big guys, you can see something that is starting to seem like a trend. And part of that knowledge, when you read and when you upskill yourself, is to say, my gut says something's going on here. Because again, there's a science and there's also just plain gut. And say, this guy's grabbing this ugali like this. Either a butchery does it because he was dipping it into some nyama, or the biggest thing on that screen was what? But who took that opportunity?
Exactly.
A betting company.
And here's the scariest part.
Yeah.
Laura, here's the scariest part. For MSMEs in Africa, for mid-sized companies, for the large-sized companies, here's the scariest part. Amazon is here. We've been thinking that this Amazon is
far. There. Yeah, like the moon.
It is here.
Yeah.
And let me tell you how it is here. They're putting up a 4 billion rand headquarters in Cape Town for Africa. Number one. Number two, almost every startup in Africa is either on Azure or
AWS.
AWS, Amazon Web Services. Number 3, they are acquiring and buying some of the largest fintech companies in Africa. Now, let me tell everyone here who's listening to us, who is an MSME, who is a one-man show, who is a large company, whoever. There's a term in the US they use, you've been Amazoned. You don't want to be a statistic. How do you not become a statistic? You need to upscale yourself. Number 2, you have to start playing that game. You don't have a choice. Supermarkets in this country. I walk into a supermarket and I have 2 trolleys full of stuff. I'm lining up. A guy who's bought maziwa lala na mkate moja, there's no line. When I'm asking, everyone is telling me, but that's their business model. I'm like, dude, can you imagine a high-end club treating a guy who buys a bottle of whiskey for 30K or 50K or 100K being treated like this, and a guy who buys a kabia being given the first-class service?
Express lane.
The express lane. Surely, this business model has to change, or I promise you, they will all die.
Yeah, but this is why, like in Europe and the US, they have the self-checkout. Okay?
That's the thing.
Yeah, so that it's actually fully self-service. You come, you do your thing, you
It's
check
not
yourself out,
rocket science.
you go, you run your card or whatever it is, or tap to pay, what's that thing is called, tap and pay, and you move on.
Our thinking simply has to change, Laura.
Yeah, it has to change. The thing is, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was doing a talk for the World Bank, the technology division in the World Bank. And I think they were having their kickoff or something like that, and strategy session. And as I was doing my talk and doing some research around what I was going to deliver to them, this thing, the future of work, yes, came up very strongly as I was doing my research. And basically, what came out very clearly is that these people in the technology ecosystem, in the marketing ecosystem, really need to think about how you're going to make yourself relevant.
Completely.
Now, I threw the spanner in the works around why is it my problem to worry about data, to worry about data protection, to worry about running my own reports, because that's not what I've been trained in as a marketer. Me, I've been trained to run campaigns, ROI, negotiate for budgets and things like that, okay? But bottom line is, when I was saying it's HR's problem, I must go back and connect to HR, do you know what they're saying about the future of work? Now that we're in the time of a pandemic, now that jobs are changing, you have to take responsibility for yourself.
Correct.
And upskill yourself at your own pace.
Absolutely.
Because do you know what companies are doing now? And we've seen all these free courses happening, Coursera and all those things. Yeah. They're throwing all these opportunities online for you to self-pace and train yourself. So take responsibility. So my fellow marketers out there, take responsibility for you to remain relevant.
So
you have to self-pace and train yourself.
I sit on the board of Longhorn Publishers.
Yeah.
And just before the pandemic, we pushed for everyone in the organization, including directors, to get on LinkedIn Learning. Mm-hmm. Amazing results. Amazing. Guys are getting in. Even my chairman, who is 70 plus years, he's clocking some of the highest hours on LinkedIn Learning. Yeah. So self-paced. I mean, if you're gonna wait for your HR to come to you with your balanced scorecard, sijui your learning and growth, you have sijui targets, nobody cares, man. At the end of the year, if you've not upskilled yourself, you're going to be shown the door.
And not even, that's not about a skill, it's about delivery.
Yes.
Delivery. And remember, this conversation we are having, it's around how is marketing partnering with the technology department to be able to deliver results for the business, whatever it is you're doing.
Can I share a practical perspective?
Yeah.
So we work with a number of clients in different spaces, whether it's real estate, financial services, and so forth. And one of the most interesting things we see sometimes is if a campaign is executed really well on digital, something peculiar happens, right? So you turn on the campaign, you might have a landing page, or it's a Facebook or a mobile app download or whatever. But let's just look at a scenario where we do this campaign, it's running across a number of platforms, and it does exceedingly well because we've done excellent targeting. The client gave us a spreadsheet of their contacts, of their customers. We did what they call lookalikes on Facebook. So Facebook can target people who are already like your customers, can go to Google and target what they call similar audiences. So using all this data, to really do what I call surgical precision marketing. So only the right people are seeing the message, and it's using all these algorithms to make sure that it's matching the ad to the right person. So here's the interesting part. What happens in an organization that has not built a technology stack or capability in terms of the platforms, the processes, and the people to accommodate the fact that they're going to get 1,000 leads a day? In a week, they're going to get 7,000 leads. Now, you then have to discern out of these 7,000 pretty good qualified leads, who is at the top of the funnel, who's just kind of looking at it, and who's at the bottom of the funnel where they're ready to hit the button and send you some money. Right? How do you make sense of all that data? You need that marketing technology so that you can actually start to make sense of the fact that you're getting 1,000 leads a day that are highly qualified. And guess what? You only have 3 guys in sales who are now meant to deal with that volume. And guess what? They dropped the ball. They don't have the
Completely.
Yeah.
They don't have the processes. They don't have the platforms, the CRMs, the marketing automation. All these things are going to make sense. And guess what happens after 2-3 days? We can't handle
It's too much. There's an overload.
So the entire organization needs to rethink how they handle the marketing component where you're creating this demand, and then the fulfillment, as Ali was saying,
The
how
brand
do we convert
bubble.
that opportunity into actual sales.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens in a business that may have an e-commerce component. What happens when suddenly you're generating more sales than you have inventory to fulfill? So this is an interesting, peculiar thing that happens. That you actually get calls sometimes like, okay, guys, pause it or scale down the daily budget so that we can handle the volume of what you're sending.
Can you imagine?
So it's a domino effect.
Yes.
And it's actually a positive domino effect if you're organized
If
and
you're
well,
organized.
if you're
Guess what
planned.
happens when you don't fulfill? Or don't meet
Of
the
course you-
promise? Your
yeah.
brand is damaged.
Of
Because
course,
what they say,
immediately.
"Hey, I did this, I did everything you asked for, and guess what? I'm not getting what I asked for." So then it becomes actually a brand destroyer of sorts. because
Yeah.
Your digital now has actually overwhelmed your capacity to deliver the value proposition.
Yeah. So before we go into a commercial break, we are going to go into a commercial break. I want Mbogo to say something because Mbogo has been nodding and he's trying to, but the rest of us have really run.
It's the shock of agreement. It would be really cool to then speak about the different technology, what goes into that tech stack,
Yeah.
and then maybe also have a conversation around experimentation.
Yeah.
Because if if you go to Facebook Blueprint where they give you insights, they'll give you a high level and say we worked with a bank brand X and they give us a certain budget, which of course runs in the millions of dollars, and they're able to see 3 million people sign up, right? Most people don't have that sort of budget, but you can experiment with as little as 1,000 bob. So to be great to speak into the different platforms, the customer data platforms and the data management platforms, distill those or break those down for people to understand what are those, and then we talk about experimenting.
Great. So that's what we're going to come back and talk about next. We're going to go into a break now. Thank you very much to the audience. We'll see you shortly. Right, ladies and gentlemen, Thank you very much for joining us in the first half of our marketing debate. We are back for part 2, where we're going to go a little bit more technical for you, just to give you a better understanding of some of the steps that you need to take around going digital from a marketing perspective. What do you need to look out for? Whether you're a large, small, medium organization, it's never too late to start. You can start at any time. The point is to embrace digital going forward. And as I said, this is the beginning of a conversation that we'll be having on Wednesday next week. So just, we're just whetting your appetites. And then on Wednesday next week, we're going to have a lot more content rolling out during the marketing summit. So to kick us off, Mbogwa, we just closed off as you were trying to, get us to speak a little bit around data, speak a little bit around what your journey should look like, speak a little bit around the tools one should look at. So I'm going to leave it to you. Start us off, and then we can continue the discussion and chip in.
Excellent. So first, to recap on a point made by Moses, is that there's no point of putting nitro onto a broken process. So marketing, MarTech, will not help a broken process, or will not help where there is no process.
Right.
So let's start talking about how do we create that process. And since at the end of the day, with everything that you do in the market, the end goal is to always make a sale, right? Every interaction leads to a transaction. The ultimate transaction is for me to pull some shillings out of Ali's pocket and to hopefully do that regularly without him feeling that, he's given me too much.
Too much, exactly.
So that simply means that the process must start with who? With the customer, not even with the technology.
Yes.
Understanding that customer, and like we said earlier, our customers are in different places.
I really love that, because I think we think the other way. We think technology, then customer. Like now we're under this pressure of technology everywhere, technology right now, mobile first, We're forgetting that at the end of the day, we are servicing a human being who is a customer.
And again, technology or innovation is not just about bits and bytes in terms of software. So when we talk about understanding your customer, let's look at the spectrum. In Kenya, last census, how many are we? 50 million? 50 million,
yeah.
So then you go to the CA and you say, tell me how many guys are, or maybe look at the largest network in Kenya and say, how many people are on the internet regularly? They'll tell you maybe 15 million. How many people are on 4G devices? They'll tell you, oh, we are just hitting 6 million on that.
You can actually get the data to a man.
There you go. Now imagine if we only deal with digital in terms of massive spread, then out of 50 million people, the total addressable market for our digital technology ends up being, if you've gone, it's Kama umeenda sana. It's interesting when you do direct translation. Kama umeenda sana when you've gone. Kama umeenda sana is 20 million, right? What about the rest? Yeah. What about the rest? So from my point of view is the technology or the interface doesn't have to be just directly with the consumer. Because if we go to an environment where people are, mobile but not online, what happens then? What if you look at people who are neither mobile nor online? What happens then? You simply need to tool the right person in that value chain. And here's where I look at people like agents, because like I said, I walk to Ali, I find him outside the mosque on Friday, and I'm able to size him up. But now I'm sufficiently tooled by my business to profile him properly. And I sell him a pair of shoes, and I size him up. That information goes somewhere. So we are starting with the customer first. So once you're exactly. So we've essentially brought him offline. From offline, we now have a visibility of him online. So when he does make a purchase 2 weeks later, whether it's from a physical shop or again from a different agent, we can now start building a profile on this guy and say, we need to target more people like him. Looking at the general space where it's now you're dealing services, like we said, donut still has to get to my mouth, logistics, etc., but digital newspaper or digital whatever, some sort of content. Where are those audiences and how do you begin? Could still begin by my immediate circle. I'm reminded of a time election period where I'm sitting with a person who's interested in taking a seat. And he was of the opinion that he wanted to go around buying databases. Like and this is even before the Data Privacy Act. And he said, no.
Wow.
What's in your hand? We don't exist in silos, right? We've got friends, family, enemies. Everyone is a point of amplification. So like with this particular person, he had a close group of 500, and we said, start with what's in hand. And essentially we ran a campaign, both offline and online, and at the end of I think it was 60 days, he had an opt-in database of 35,000 people.
Awesome.
Names, email addresses, phone numbers. And now that seeds your universe, okay? So we start with the customer in mind, and then we're able to bring them onto the sort of tooling that allows us to then position different products and services, and based on those interactions, probably drive onto a sale.
Yeah.
That calls for quite a bit of patience, because unfortunately, we're used to, I spent money, I put my agents on the ground, or I put money onto Facebook, Google, Twitter, etc. I didn't see anything this week.
Yeah.
People try to sell land that way. Laura is an influencer and says, buy land. Hasn't been targeted. For crying out loud, I just came from campus last year, and you're here telling me to buy.
Yeah.
You see, to just add on to what Mbugo has said and amplify what Moses said about managing your funnel. Simple. You've got potential customers at every stage of the sales pipeline. How do you manage that without feeding them information they don't need at that particular time? The beauty about it is that you have tools today that are free to a large extent online. You have tools that have freemium models, which means you have opportunity to use that tool up to a certain level for free. And then when you start seeing value, and you start scaling up your ability to use that tool, then you can start paying for that extra functionality to move your sales further. The problem we have is, again, we have taken our mentality of traditional selling online. There's no time for cold calling anymore. Why the hell do you want to cold call when you can know me digitally? You want to get to a point where you are moving more of your sales inbound as opposed to outbound. So what do I mean by inbound? In the simplest way, outbound is knocking on doors. Have you heard about us?
Like the insurance
so
guys.
And so and so. Yeah?
Like insurance.
Yes. Why are you wasting time? When you can create the perfect scenario where someone is panting to buy from Moses.
Call it magical. Like, how did you know? I wanted this.
You get to a point where your customers become your evangelists.
Absolutely. Can I share an interesting insight? So you just mentioned something important about the way we can use digital platforms to know our prospective customers, or even our existing customers, before they buy from us, or when we want to acquire more sales from them. And I'm reminded of an incident where I was actually speaking at an event, and when we gave our speaker profiles, you give your little narrative, and I always mention in my speaker profile that I'm a long-standing but suffering Arsenal fan. And I'm proud of it. I'm a proud supporter of Arsenal since 1997.
Move over. Manu is calling.
And they saw this little nuance in there, and we went and gave the presentation. And I think I gave them a notice of probably 2 weeks before my session. At the end of the session, they said, okay, we know of your particular pain and your love of a certain team. And at the end of the session, they delivered with my name at the back of the t-shirt in the perfect size. They even spent time to look at my size to see. And there I was, with my Arsenal shirt gifted to me, and then also a, what do you call it?
Scarf.
A scarf. Branded as
Wow.
well. And they gave it to me. And I'm telling you, I left there and I felt so overwhelmed.
Yes.
Because they had gone through the effort and the time to know this little subtle detail about me.
Yes.
And maybe it cost them, 3, 4, 5,000 shillings. But what for me that did is that I think that's what brands need to be doing with their marketing, where
Absolutely.
you create these delightful moments where you're using data to tap into an emotional button where this person or prospect is concerned, and bring something to the fore that you know about them. And then use that data to create this delightful experience that potentially is going to create a customer for life.
Absolutely. Now contrast that with some email from a clown I got the other day telling me I have a list of 50,000 emails and phone numbers from such industries. And I'm like, people still do that?
Even on LinkedIn, it's horrible.
That's
People
terrible.
still do that?
You connect on LinkedIn and the first thing some people do is
Yeah, people, come on, guys. Here's the thing. You've got to do the hard work.
Yeah.
You've got to do the time. There are no shortcuts. Digital does not equate to shortcuts.
Yeah.
You've got to do the work to get there. You know, I cannot emphasize this more. You want to get there, you want to get to marketing nirvana, you must do the work. But the first and most important thing that you must do is you must upscale yourself. You must upskill yourself. Otherwise, you're just gonna, as Moses said, you're just gonna find some young guy with dreads, and you think that dreads equate to digital prowess.
No, first of all, let's leave these dreads people alone, okay? They have some kind of prowess, so just leave them alone. But this is my thing, and I think this is where we are going wrong with digital marketing, okay? You wake up in the morning, you post something on social media and expect to see results. You have not thought about your content, you've not thought about your audience, yeah? You've not thought about, there's something called engagement, okay? You've not thought about how you're going to measure it. And then you sit back and say, this thing is not working for me. There's been no planning, there's been nothing, no work has been done. And this is what I see a lot, that people on social media, people think they're doing digital marketing. I don't think it is, and it drives me nuts.
Or spamming family groups with stuff from your
And I'm
biashara.
like, guys, we really need to step back and go back to the basics. The way we were doing it traditionally, running our campaigns, the same goes into, the principles remain the same around digital. You have to do the work, and then you will see the results. And it's not an overnight miracle, you know? Build digital identities.
Yes.
Get to know your customers. You know, what are their likes and dislikes? When are they online? When is the right time for you to post something for it to have impact? What is your call to action? Those are different things that we're not thinking about.
To that point, what many people are afraid of doing is experimenting. And you're better off experimenting with, you can experiment with a budget as little as 500 bob. And I dare say, if that's too expensive, then maybe someone should find a job, because you actually do need to do the science behind it and say, with my 500 shilling, let me try see what drives engagement or drives sales for me. Because again, there are different things that you can do. Like you said, every interaction leads to a transaction. Maybe the first transaction I'm looking for is I just need to identify with my 30,000 women audience, right? Before I move towards selling them anything. That could be the first one. Or it could be that you want to go almost directly to a sale, which might require you to have a bit more of a straight shot type of content. But again, it's sort of like a long game. And with all the tools we're talking about, especially on the analytics side, I don't think it would be proper to maybe specify tools, because you're not saying that this is the tool that will do it for you. There are thousands of tools. There are many different toolkits. Is to say, let me walk this journey and discover my secret sauce. I'll go back to the fact that many things are highly, highly commoditized. So what is that thing that's going to drive differentiation for you? I'll tell you some of the challenges or some of the opportunities we see when looking at public transport is, we're not about to start giving discounts and offers. You don't build a business on discounts and promotions. You build a business on value, but how do you ensure that you keep top of mind?
Value prop, or what's
So,
your competitive advantage?
Like we feel that for a lot of our audiences, what will help them, stay top of mind is telling them about the environment. I spent months walking around Nairobi looking at landmarks and just trying to say, okay, what is this thing? For example, do you know there's this sphere that is right next to Teleposta Towers? Do you know what that is? Any of you know what that is? When they say Nairobi is X kilometers from London, that is where they measure it from.
Oh, really?
Yes. That's a nuance about Nairobi that you didn't know about.
Interesting.
So if I send you something on email, it's a fancy something, I forget the memorial, something memorial. If I send you that email, you're smarter today. The next time you're going to the bar, or the next time you're having your kashindik, you'll be like, do you know? You want to be the brand that tells people, do you know?
Yeah.
If you're selling liquor or anything like that, it's how do I make it such that I'm the guy who does the best mixes.
Top of mind.
Top of mind.
Top of mind.
So that journey, like you see, you're creating a connection, and which is why if you see some of the people who do a lot of this content creation, even without having a commercial agenda, get some crazy followers.
That's true.
Because you're just smarter today.
But
Yeah.
I think that comes to a very interesting point that there's almost an art and a science to this. Right? And the science is the platforms, it's the pipes, it's the bandwidth and that. But I think the art of this is almost what I think you're calling storytelling, where marketing now also needs to become about how do you create that human connection, which is part of storytelling. And for me, one of the best examples I can think of is a very popular group on Facebook called the Humans of New York. I don't know if you ever visited it,
Honey,
but those guys are just incredible.
They're
I mean, it
amazing,
started off with a guy walking around New York, seeing people, identifying quirks about them, takes a photo, records a conversation, then transcribes it into a post. And organically, typically, they get anywhere from 250 to 500,000 people engaging with these posts. Now, recently, I remember they posted something around a family that was affected during the pandemic. They recently emigrated to the US and just arrived literally before the pandemic. They opened a restaurant, put all their money into it, and this thing was falling apart.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Humans of New York created a narrative on Facebook, about 5 or 6 posts telling the story of how they got there, the challenges they're facing, and then only after the journey of creating the emotional connection did they start to tell the ask at the end of the last 2-3 posts. And the last 3 posts, so these guys are struggling, they're having a problem, and if you guys feel that you might want to help them, here's a link to the GoFundMe, and we will help you. Now, the last time I checked the GoFundMe, you know what was in there? How much they'd raised for this family? Asking people on Humans of New York,
Yes.
it was $1.5 million.
No way.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that was storytelling using a technology platform leading to a call to action where they had created this emotional narrative and then people converted. So I think we need to also start thinking about the artistic, the creative side, and how it complements the technology.
Ali, so that it doesn't escape my mind. Back to our shared history at 3 Mice.
Yes.
And now some of the properties that have blown up on Insta, on Facebook, are say cooking groups and all this kind of stuff. And I remember at some point we were doing some work for Bidco, and as early as 2002, you know what Bidco was doing? Instead of saying buy this 20-liter whatever
jerrycan of oil,
and expose you on all low cholesterol, whatnot. That a guy called Chef Tom used to send out the most beautiful of email newsletters with recipes and invite people to say, cook it and send and you're asking someone to send a picture in the days when if it was being sent, it would be so grainy.
Yeah.
So pixelated.
Yes. Coca-Cola had something called Life in Red.
Life in Red.
Life in Red had the most happening, over 100,000 signed up users. This is 2002, pre-Facebook.
Wow.
Yes.
That's awesome.
And what they were simply doing, they're saying Life in Red is about, excellent. Yeah. So Life in Red is there. You can see they had something going called the Coca-Cola Pop Stars. One best picture in the house used to be to see so many submissions. Like
I wish the Coke guys will say this.
Just pause with a bottle of Coke and tell us what was your emotion of just chilling.
Wow.
We were doing, you can see there, Nation FM and Capital FM streaming before streaming was a thing.
Yep.
This is a brand that was connecting
2002.
Yeah.
life in red. Like this
Yeah.
is the Coke lifestyle. You're
Yeah.
chilling, you're
Yeah.
with friends, it's movies, it's lifestyle, it's listening to the radio, bringing all that together.
Yeah.
You could imagine if you were going to sell, and another crazy thing I've just seen at the bottom there, we used to build wallpapers, screensavers as as well. Can you imagine? People used to download screensavers.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Oh,
Was
yes.
that like the swag then?
That was it.
Uh-huh.
Like I've got a Coke screensaver and whatnot.
Yeah.
So this community of 100,000. Tell me if you had a music concert, you wouldn't be going to, I don't know, the newspaper to advertise. You've got your own audience and say,
Completely.
we don't even have enough space. We don't have a concert facility that can hold 100,000
Yeah,
people here.
yeah.
So it'd say 20K tickets.
Yeah.
With today's
First
modern,
come, first serve. Yeah.
with today's modern rails on finance and payments, you'd sell out.
Even an
Completely.
hour, you're
Yes,
done.
you're done.
You're done. You're done. You run your concert without a problem.
And it was
yeah.
interesting that Life in Red was actually, I think, even the team from Atlanta were like saying this is one of those global firsts.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it would have been nice, to just
And
carry that story on.
it's so interesting that
now.
you guys were doing this kind of stuff in 2002. Then
Yes.
somewhere along the way, we dropped the ball.
Correct.
Yeah.
We are now here trying to talk about digital marketing when this had started a long time ago. You were forward-thinking people, So where did we lose momentum? Where do you guys think we lost momentum? And then, Ali, before you say something, we are the Silicon Savannah. Okay? Look at what you guys were doing in 2002. You are already thinking ahead. Think about the amount of startups we have in this region today. We have Konza, which is trying to be like a hub or trying to encourage startups. We have all this funding coming into East Africa or Africa for startups, and it's around fintechs. What can we do around Martech? Should we just get these guys to think a bit differently and lead the pack?
There's a thing about two things. There's a thing about maybe being a little bit too early before your time.
Premature.
It's as good as being wrong. Actually, that's it.
But there's also something else that I think Steve Jobs famously said, connecting the dots. That's what we are doing now.
Okay.
We are connecting the dots, with our gray hairs and white hairs, thinking about those
I don't know who
days.
we means, but it's okay. Go ahead, Ali. Speak for yourself.
That experience of those days and the current situation we are. Did you know that the latest global fintech index just came out on Wednesday? Guess what? Nairobi is top 50 in the world fintech city ecosystems. That did not just happen yesterday.
Yeah.
That's because when these things are when they are ranking using a number of metrics. Ease of doing business, infrastructure, ICT. Let me mention some names that maybe some of the younger generation may not have known, may not have heard. People like Ndemo, people like the first Dr. Bitange Ndemo, PS that time, MOICT, the first ICT ministry probably in Africa. Paul Kukubo, one of the founders of 3 Mice and the first CEO of the
ICTA.
ICT Authority.
Yeah.
All these names, the first, the current CS for Health.
No.
CS for Health.
Mutahi.
Mutahi.
Yeah. Mutahi Kagwe. Yeah.
Mutai Kagwe, the current CS for ICT, Honorable Joe Musheru, then Google head for Africa. All these things are coming together. It's connecting the dots.
Yeah.
It's it reminds me of people seeing some guy driving a Mercedes or a latest VX and saying, look at that guy. Just the other day. Let me just remind guys. Waswahili wanasema ukiona vinaelea jua vimeundwa. it has taken time to get here. You know, you get guys asking, what happened? Today morning, when I posted this, I got some guy from Nigeria. What do you think are the ingredients of making Nairobi
The hub.
the hub, the fintech hub? We are number 37 in the world when it comes to fintech ecosystems. Just think about that. This is an African. We are told Africa sijui nini, sijui nini. No, we have beaten cities like Madrid. We've beaten cities like Dallas. We've beaten cities like Dublin. FYI, Dublin is the headquarters, European headquarters of big tech companies.
Yeah.
You know, so to your question, what happened? You know, all those things are now coming together and creating what I would call the perfect storm.
Yeah. Yeah, but you see, the perfect storm has to now turn into a tornado. You know why? Because we cannot continue operating as what is called third world countries. We have the opportunity to leapfrog. Okay? And the best part is, from a young age, our youth have adopted technology very fast. So we can, what we're supposed to do is not stifle them, but get them moving very fast.
Our biggest problem, and I keep on saying this every day, is a mindset. From a fintech technology perspective, we are killing that mindset. Our challenge now to the marketing and technology community, the marketing societies of Kenya and stuff like that, we must now build this country, this city, to become the Martech, one of the Martech capitals of the world, just like we've done with fintech.
That's my point. So look at different verticals of how we can take advantage of technology. And by the way, sorry, Mbuga, and by the way, it's not only about Kenya. Here we're talking Africa.
Yes.
So we can do those things where we say, West Africa is going to focus on Martech. Southern Africa can focus on customer service. Northern Africa, and so that as a continent, we pull together and have this thing that we are pushing forward, that everybody must look at us and be like, okay, these guys are up to something. There's something brewing there, and this tornado is going to finish us. As simple as that. Sorry, Mbugwa, go ahead. And while you're going ahead, let's start thinking about our closing remarks.
Excellent. You bring up a very good point about, can we start building out some of these technologies ourselves?
Yes.
One of the biggest hindrances from those years, anytime you walked into a room and you said, this is possible, many people used to ask, where has this been done before? Because, the running joke, you never get fired for hiring. IBM. Like, why has it been done before? Who's used this tech before? And that you keep hitting these walls, and then all these multinational corporations come in, and suddenly for every 10 shillings of ad spend, 80% goes out of the country. While
what
you're
a
saying
pity.
we have the ability to actually craft this, and I've got a straight solution for that kind of conundrum. To say, for example, in retail, we do have an association like Retrack. People pay membership fees. Retrack should be at the center of building out this shared technology. Let's catch our own itch first. And this can be, now we're putting it on the table. Any market that executes it, own your segment of the market. And say, here's a solution that is able to map your offline sales to digital sales. If you're a member, you can subscribe and get access to this data in compliance with the Marketing Association guidelines, in compliance with the Data Privacy Act, so that someone can know if I plug into this ecosystem. Because again, the challenge for a lot of SMEs is you do not have the budget to hire someone for that technology role. etc. You want tools that you can go in and they're dumb. I do this thing and I know it is compliant. So associations can actually take up that mantle and run with it. And the other one is, again, for startups. A lot of this data needs to be resident on the continent. And that's a huge opportunity. It's probably a longer game than most are willing to play. But the exit potential for that from a job creation perspective and a value creation perspective are immeasurable. So associations, and also straight up just startup founders and their teams saying, we want to apply ourselves towards this. And I believe there's a place for corporate partnerships as well. whether you're Unilever, whether you're Bitco, we will all benefit from this collective pool when we come together. It's called co-petition. Let's create a pool of technology that, one, reduces the total cost of ownership or participation. And then let's go compete on what? Customer service, on product differentiation. But all this other stuff, let's be compliant about it. And let's say, just like the banks did it, they said, let's come together and build a switch that will make it easier and better for us to be able to offer services.
Thank you, Bogwa. Moses, you want to say something? And then Ali?
For me, I don't know, maybe several points, right? So I have some areas of genuine concern, especially when I think about the MSME or the small business, right? Like the other day, I was talking to somebody who, just started a cake business, and they published some content on Facebook. So I reached out to them, and even another one, I think the other day, I think was retrenched, that started a business selling meat products, burger patties, you buy. But I asked the first question, okay, have you built, where's your Facebook page for the business? And then she sent me her personal Facebook page. I said, no, the one for the business.
For the business.
And then I asked, okay, have you got WhatsApp Business, which is another tool that allows you to actually put your products in a catalog and have a WhatsApp platform. So I started to realize that, especially for the MSME market and people who are sort of, again, in this situation, people who've been entrenched, innovating, trying to create their own little businesses, they don't even know what they don't know. Okay? And when you start realizing that they are the drivers of the African economy and the people who could actually benefit the most from marketing, technology, and digital marketing, they don't even know what's up. Number two, I realized in Africa that one of our greatest opportunities is potentially possibly our underprivileged environment, where you find a company like SportPesa, as you may recall a few years ago, went from zero to sponsoring Formula One and Premier League teams. How did they do it? They operate on what I like to call the Kadogo economy, right? I think in Kenya we know that phrase. That idea that rather than buying an entire box of cereal, you sell portions of it, or instead of selling high value limited numbers, you sell small quantities with small margins to millions of people. And I think when you look at SportPesa, there's a clear example of a company that employed a lot of digital marketing as well and traditional, and we're able to scale up on the basis of 5 million consumers each betting 50 shillings a day. And I think when you look at that, then we start to sort of say, we then should not approach the market from trying to cut and paste what works in North America, but what works within an African environment, so that you can build significant startups and businesses that are using marketing technology that can use these nuances. Number three, I almost feel like, to some extent in the marketing space, that most of the, shall I call them, the territories have already been dominated, meaning that the platforms are there, you've got your Facebooks, Googles and all. It's unlikely you're going to top
unseat them.
But what can you do around using those platforms with excellence, taking advantage of the arbitrage between the reach and the cost of you using the platform, and then use that as a basis for building an excellent business that is able to thrive because you're able to use the technology effectively. So clearly, we need to start thinking about the quality of the content and also the skill sets we need to utilize the platforms properly. And therefore, that means partnerships, that means acquiring the skills and certifications, and really trying to understand how to use these technologies more effectively. And I think probably the most important one is, how do we make sure that the leaders of marketing within our African marketplace start to actually become practitioners, or at the very least fully understand how the platforms work, so that they can start pushing a lot more money into these ecosystems. And I'm saying this because if you look at it today, that we're still probably overspending on traditional more than digital. And I think that means also that digital today is relatively underpriced in Africa compared to other markets in the world, where companies are spending 80% on digital, 20% on traditional. Here we're still spending probably 80% on traditional, 20% on digital. So it's still a window of opportunity in the sense that if you can overspend, or rather over-index on digital, then you potentially can get a disproportionate value for money, because not everyone is really there yet. Although we can say that the betting companies are there in a big way in Kenya right now.
They obviously got the sweet spot already. Ali, your closing remarks. We have 3 minutes to go.
I think for me, it's just to remind all of us and our audience that the giants of today are probably the miners of tomorrow. There is no permanency in this world. Today Google is big, tomorrow it might be. It might be. So as we are doing our daily stuff, it goes back to what my brother Bugwa emphasized on experimentation. Even as you're doing your Facebooks, you're doing your Google, you're doing wherever, experiment. There are some interesting small platforms that are coming up. Who would have thought M-Pesa would be the monster it is today? We forget that there was no M-Pesa 13 years ago. And yet, even today, as we continue to celebrate M-Pesa as the rails for the financial services in the country, you know that 85% of transactions are still in cash.
Yeah.
So everyone is fighting for the 90+% or 15%.
Yeah.
And everyone has forgotten the 85%.
Exactly.
Blue ocean. I want to remind all of us, including myself, I keep on reminding myself that there is no permanency in life. And the way to keep yourself fresh is to continuously refresh yourself, continuously repurpose yourself, day in, day out. Laura, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much to my panelists today, or my fellow debaters. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's been a fantastic 1 hour. I'm getting all sorts of messages that the content has been interesting, the discussion here has been interesting. I just want to remind you, please remember to go and register for the main summit. Go to our website, www.cio.co.ke. Register and join us on Wednesday for the Africa Marketing Summit, which we're calling Martech, so that the conversation can continue. For me, I have nothing else to add as I close off. I have learned so much. I know I am the 80% traditional, 20% digital still, but I'm beginning to shift. I think I'm now reaching, I'm at 65, 35 or something like that. I'll be doing well by Wednesday. I promise you, I'll be doing well. I'll be achieving marketing goals through technology, as it says there. Yeah. So thank you for your knowledge. Thank you for sharing your insights. And I look forward to us continuing engaging online. Have a good weekend and take care of yourselves and keep safe. To our audience, thank you for joining us. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend.